a little bit about yourself, and where you're at the moment in your career, and what it is you'd like to focus on with storytelling, and why it is you've taken this approach and come to Pipdex.
Yeah, thank you. So most of my background is in project and program management, like particularly in data and analytics. I've worked across industries in Los Angeles, the normal ones, tech, entertainment, e-commerce, most recently at a fintech startup. And as I've been going through the interview process, after getting laid off August of 23, I've just noticed, over that time, it was some 15 months or so that just the few times I've gotten to the interview stages, I've not, I've not made it through all the way. And even when doing so, after when I look back and kind of do like my own individual retro, I don't feel like I was anywhere near as effective as I could have been. And I just kind of leave, wondering, just kind of like, did I do enough and not feeling very confident in the outcomes? Part of I think my my journey this year, yeah, I was very fortunate. I got accepted by the Anderson School of UCLA for their executive MBA program, and working with their career services team. I've been able to kind of decode a lot of we don't know, and just learning a lot about how better to network, how better to kind of think about those type of relationships. But when I really think about it, it comes down to the interview. And
Mm,
really, all of the self-study I've done on is like, you need to tell a compelling story. Like
mm,
somebody told me, it's like you need to be the least risky candidate. You want to just be the shoe-in for that to make it easy for that decision. To me, like it makes a lot of sense that it's like, you need to have a narrative then that supports that. And I'm, terrible at that. And I think to complexify that, just this year, finally got a diagnosis, after 41 years of inattentive ADHD. And a
right.
lot of that, just really is like, just we handle emotion differently. And so if every memory is kind of more of a vibe, then it's like very difficult to get that into a star format to just concisely, and I think with high value, be able to communicate that information. And so, I've been circling around the pip deck community for a while, and finally I just realized, like I need to change the inputs if the outputs stay the same. And so
Mm,
pulled the trigger on it.
mm. Okay, so I'm going to. This it's very interesting what you say there, and I think that it's also interesting because we just as we were chatting before we started recording, you said, "Well, I don't have any difficulty in conversation."
Hmm.
And most people don't, and so to bring people into a conversation about what you do and to hold them and hold their interest and communicate what it is you do effectively. Okay, well that's fine, but it's that pressure situation of the job interview which actually then raises the stakes that much more and makes us all go. I mean, nobody likes job interviews. Even if you think it's that nightmare. Even if you think you're the really strong candidate, you're then thinking like you're working in the company already and you're applying for a job. I think it's mine to it's mine to blow, and I could just blow this,
Hmm.
and then they'll take a chance on somebody from outside, and I'm like, or yeah, so it's very very difficult. There's an interesting thing is my wife works in academia, and in the UK at the moment that industry's it's very uncertain, and somebody had said to her quite recently, you need to have a narrative for your career.
Hmm.
So actually, there's apparently a thing now about narrative CVs, which is about, CV isn't just a list of qualifications; it's kind of got a thread running through it, like a
Interesting.
narrative thread. Yeah, well, I thought that was quite interesting too, and it made me think, well, what does that mean? And I think, well, there's a couple of levels. Um, there's a couple of levels on which you can think what it means. This, um, and there's a great interview. I know you said you worked in the entertainment world. Um, Matt and Trey, the guys who do South Park, Trey
Yeah.
Parker
Yes.
and Matt
Yes.
Stone. Yeah. Well, they did a
Hmm.
great. There's a great video of them on YouTube talking about narrative and talking about storytelling. And they say, well, story can't be this happened and then 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 this happened, because that's just like a list. That's just a list of random events. And they said, if that's your version of a story, you're in trouble, because it just doesn't work. Um,
Mm.
what you're looking for in story is, well, this happened, but then this happened. Oh, okay. So in other words, this we thought we were doing this, but then this happened. Oh, right. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, okay. And so I did this. And that story structure, that's going beginning, middle, end, where the beginning is, well, I thought we were doing okay over here, but then wham. So you did it actually in our little preamble here. You said, so I was working
Hmm.
in e-commerce, entertainment, and tech, but then I got made redundant, and now
Hmm.
and so I went to do an executive MBA, and so I also decided to pull the trigger on storyteller tactics. So you're actually doing
Mm.
so in conversation we do it. We kind of make these links of explanation, and
Hmm.
the story structure behind it is quite simple. It's the order and chaos structure, because the once upon a time at first, yeah. So at first we do this. Well, that's the world of order, like where everything is okay. It's not perfect, but it's okay. So in
Hmm.
2000 and
23.
2023, I had a steady job doing this. Okay, but then something unexpected hits you, um,
Mm.
and so I'm now at the I can't remember the name of the school where I do the executive MBA.
UCLA.
UCLA. Okay, and so I decided to go to UCLA. Okay, so that then becomes not just a list of dates. Yeah, so that's gone from a CV, which is just bullet points of dates, into a narrative, and the narrative is about trying to move forward in the world, but
Mm.
against the buffetings and the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. So you're going through, and life is chucking stuff at you. Uh, um,
Sure.
but then I realized I got this diagnosis of inattentive ADHD, and so I've realized I need to
Mm.
change some of the inputs that I'm using. Okay, so all of this is comes out in conversation, and so sometimes what we do when we sit down at the keyboard and we try to write, and so you're preparing your job interview um, script in your head, and we sit down and they think, and we forget to talk like normal, like our normal selves, and we start to talk
Hmm.
like the man with the keyboard who's going to
Hmm.
sort of use all these $10 words, and that's obviously where we tend to go wrong. So that's quite interesting already, is to start thinking, okay, well, in this job interview situation, what you're trying to do is be like you, but minus all the boring bits and minus all the ums and ers and minus, so you're
Hmm.
basically being like you, but like the concentrated version of the high energy version, the high sugar version of you. So the narrative career thing I think is really interesting, and I think, as I say, the idea of a narrative CV, which is something you can obviously send in, as a piece of paper, but
Hmm.
also something you can think of as how do I structure what I'm saying to people in interview? Where should I be going with this? Well, it can't just be and then and then and then and then,
Hmm.
right? Because that's not how stories work. That's a shopping list. I want you to get some chips and then some peanuts and then some soda, and yeah, that's a shopping list. Whereas
Hmm.
the story is more like, I'm doing this, but then this happens, so I cope by doing this. And then
Hmm.
this happens, and then I do this, and then this, So it's more like, okay. So that is a way of thinking in a narrative way about your career. Now, to take that a little bit, and in terms of in storyteller tactics terms, right? The card that might help you with this. Well, there's a couple of cards in the kind of the concept cards. So the first one I'm thinking of is kind of the dragon and the city, and then the next one I'm thinking of is, oops, hang on a second, is order and chaos. And these two are the red cards, the concept cards. They're meant to be about what's the thinking going on beneath the story. So
Hmm.
in the Dragon in the City, the thinking beneath the story is, look, you have got a life that's okay. You've made a good life so far. You've reached this stage in life. You're doing okay, but there are dragons out there, right, that come at you. And how do you deal with them? Well,
Hmm.
you so your decision to go to do the exec MBA is a response to a dragon, to a threat. It's also an opportunity. It's quite scary going back to school. So the dragon is scary, but it's also useful. So that's kind of a nice way of thinking about your own. But also, actually, what's interesting is when you're talking to the company. Let's say you go to Meta next, for your next interview is at Meta, right? Well, you're talking to a bunch of people who are in their own little city. The company that they work for is their city, and out there
Hmm.
somewhere, yeah, there's all sorts of dragons, whether it's legislation or AI or competitors or whatever it is, and you're offering to join their city, yeah, to help them get ready for the next dragon that's coming. So that's quite a nice. So you can use it. You can use the story
It's
structure,
powerful.
to talk about yourself, but you can also use it to say, "Hey, I'm on your side. In I could come into your city and be on your side to help you deal with, yeah, these dragons that are coming next." So
Mm.
order and chaos is kind of similar. But the thing about order and chaos is it allows you to think again about that sort of narrative structure of, well, we start out in order. Wherever you are right now, you're in a kind of order. Yeah, you've kind of, to a certain extent got your shit together. Um, Not perfect, but it's okay. Something's going to come along, right, and wallop you, because it always does, and that throw you into chaos, and then you climb out of that chaos into a hopefully into a more steady order. And so you're always in one of the two states. You're always either in order, yeah, where you're looking and waiting for the next change to happen, or you're in the chaos where you're dealing with the
Mm.
change, but nothing's ever static. So those are both interesting ways of thinking about yourself and your progress through life, which is what the narrative. I think the narrative career is all about. And obviously, there are
Yeah.
some days at work which just feel like you've just got to get the job done, and
Hmm.
okay, okay. Now, so within that, then there are, I think, a couple. Right there, I think there are three potentially interesting stories that you could think. Right, can I bring these stories in some way, and bring these stories into a narrative interview situation? Right,
Hmm.
and the stories I would say are there's three types of story, and I'll go into the cards in a second. The first one to think about is a kind of origin story, like Spider-Man. As an origin, bitten by a radioactive spider. And the second is a kind of expert story of what are you good at. And then the third one is a guide story where you are actually saying, "Well, I'm not really the hero here. Right? What I do is help other people." Now, when you tell a story like that, you are the hero, clearly, because you're helping people, yeah?
Hmm.
But you're actually talking about the person you've helped, which, in a way, a lot of people are genuinely modest. It's not false modesty; they're genuinely kind of modest, and they don't like talking about themselves. But
Hmm.
if you tell a story about someone you've helped, in a way, the story is about them, but you're shining the light on that person, but the light reflects back on you in a good way. So let's break those down
Hmm.
in a second, and I'll talk to you about what I think. So an origin story, just like Spider-Man, tells us something about why what got you started in the thing you do. So tell me about yourself in terms
Hmm.
of data and analytics. Okay, so what do you think is what's the when you if you don't matter, like go back 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, doesn't matter. Is there a moment where you realize I'm quite good at this, or you realize I'm this makes me I'm curious about this. I get lost in the flow when I'm doing this. I'm drawn in, or sometimes someone else turns to you and says, "You're quite good at this," and you go, "Oh, okay." So is there a moment in your recent past where you think that's happened?
Yeah, I think not to take everything back to HG, I think that's the gift and the curse is like for all of the
Mm,
inattentive, difficulty activating, kind of what people would say scatter-mindedness is being able to like have just everything is a causal link. It just like
mm,
your mind just keeps firing like that. And so what that ends up, I think, looking like to others is like, oh wow, like Dan's a really creative thinker, like always has like really innovative solutions to things, never afraid to ask why we're doing a thing. And so like one of my selling points is like I'm great at process optimization, and
Yep,
that just like that just we're not tied to linear thought all the time. And so I think when we talk about data, a lot of it is looking at, what happened in the past to identify trends in that. So hopefully you can project that into the future. And so, when you can kind of look at that, it's, I am good at being able to identify those outliers. And then from that, just kind of have intellectual curiosity. And I think
yep.
that's probably another part of it is just having probably maybe an over index even of intellectual curiosity.
Listen,
And
I
so,
think you're
all those things helped.
absolutely right. Okay, now this is really interesting because I hear this a lot when I work with engineers. I hear this a lot, which is, look, I have a particular way of seeing the world, and things that other people miss just seem to jump out at me. And okay, so that's really
Hmm.
interesting. Now, here's an interesting thing. So as you're talking to me there, I can hear the enthusiasm and the excitement. Okay, so I can hear that this is something that you're kind of excited about, which is good.
Hmm.
And okay, however, you're doing what a lot of people do when someone asks, like I've just asked you, just like, come on, tell me about your origin story. Okay, so you're doing what a lot of people in this situation would do, which is you're going, okay, well, I've had lots of experiences, lots of little slices of time, okay, days, weeks, months, years, hours, whatever, where I've done things, and looking back now, I take a step back, and I look back, and I go, okay, what I, Dan, can take from this is, well, I sort of abstract up, and I take the wisdom out of those lots of
Hmm.
experiences, and I go, so basically, I'm great at process optimization. I think partly it's down to the ADHD actually, because I can identify outliers and I'm not afraid of data. And I'm yeah. So you're sort of, if you like, you're giving me the high level, the big
Hmm.
picture, which is
That's what I
based
do.
on yep, which is great. But look, that's fantastic. The ability to abstract wisdom from experience is dynamite. Okay, but here's the thing: I hear you, right, and I understand you at a certain level, but I can't see what you mean yet because you're up at this level here, and I've never been at this level, and I don't work with you. So what you need to do is go, okay. I'm. Turns out I'm like I really like handling data. I like looking for outliers. I'm really good with process optimization. I think it's maybe something to do with the ADHD, but it doesn't matter. I like doing it. That's high level. Then next thing you say is, for example, boom, you drop down
Mm.
from the high level into a single moment of experience, a single time and place. For example, there was this project I worked on for for Pixar, yeah, whatever it was. For example, this time I was
Sure.
working on this project for them, and nobody else could see I was thinking, how can they not see this problem coming? And yeah, so you drop us down into a single moment, right? Um, give us the high level, yeah. Give us the
Hmm.
overview of look, these are my skills. But if you're only operating at high level, it's very hard for me to see what you mean, and it's very hard for me later to remember what you've said. But also
Hmm.
the other problem with operating at high level in job interview, or any kind of sales, like as in selling a product or selling a company, if you're only giving people the big picture stuff. So in company terms, companies say, well, we believe in customer service. We pay very close attention to product quality, and we are a sustainable company. We operate in a sustainable way, right? And you go, yeah, but everyone does. There's not a
Yeah, yeah.
single there's not a single company there's not a single company out there that doesn't believe in customer service. I mean, nobody ever says, "Well, we don't give a toss about our customers and our product's a bit shonky." And to be honest, if you don't like it, chuck it in the bin, right? So no one
Yeah.
ever. So it's like all that high level stuff is actually a waste of air because
Hmm.
it doesn't mean anything. No one ever says the opposite, and therefore, so the danger
Hmm.
in job interviews, if you're talking about your skills in the abstract, right? That's where the wisdom is. It's important stuff, but every other candidate through the door is going to be saying the same thing.
Mm.
They're good with data. They enjoy process optimization. Yeah, they'll all be saying the same thing. So you have to drop us into the moment in order to differentiate yourself. Is, for example, there was this time when, right? That's where
Mm-hmm.
the and that takes a bit of prep because you have to sit there and go, all right, okay, so which example am I going to give them?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the good story? And now, right, what you're doing is you're not trying to think. There's one single moment that says everything about me that I need to say. No, it's not that. It's just here's a moment that's a good example of what I mean, a good example of what my skills are. Just one example. And if you ask me for another, I'll give you another. And if you ask me for another, I'll give you another. But I'm just going to pick one. And the way to pick, I think, if you so you might be sitting there thinking, I already know that I already know. I I think what so I've worked with a lot of engineers, people with engineering backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
and what I observe about engineers is how do you make an engineer happy? You give him or her a problem, right? How do you make them sad? You break their machine when they're not looking. So that's
Mm-hmm.
basically yeah okay. So when you're dealing, when engineers get excited, they get excited in the detail. Yeah, when two engineers come together and try and fix something, they troubleshoot with stories. Oh, have you tried doing that? Well, yeah, I did, and then this happened. Well, what about when you said this? Well, she said no. So you're troubleshooting the story, and
Mm-hmm.
those stories are either about stupid people or stupid machines, basically. Anyway, so
Yeah.
yeah, so you're thinking to yourself, right? Maybe there's a moment that I'm really proud of where I saw the problem before anyone else did, and that's in a moment. If you're struggling and you're thinking, oh, I don't. So I'll ask you in a second if you can think of a good story that again shows your skills in action. If if you and anyone else watching this is kind of thinking, well, yeah, but I can't think of a moment, I can't think of a story. Well, okay, here's the card that'll help you, and it's in the explore section, the orange card, and it's the one called emotional dashboard. Um, and the reason why emotional dashboard will help you is emotion is very strongly related to memory.
Mm-hmm.
And so chances are, if you remember something, it has a very strong emotion attached to it. And it'll either be positive or negative. So it'll either be like, I was really frustrated because this was going wrong and I didn't know why. Or I was really happy when this went right because I was hoping it would. Yeah, or better still, you want the full arc. You want, well, I was really frustrated when I tried to fix this problem, I couldn't fix it, and then spent 24 hours just bashing it, and eventually I got it right, and everyone was really happy. Okay, so those kind of emotions. So the emotions take you to where the story lies, and then
Mm-hmm.
all you need to do is recreate the moment for us by saying, where were you? What were you doing? Who was there? What was at stake? And that basically is what you do with the card called movie time. Yeah. So movie time is about creating a movie scene. Where are you?
Mm-hmm.
What's the action? Where are you? What's happening? What's the emotion? Like who's there? What's at stake? Right. When you give us those two things it's in such detail that you could point a camera at it. Right. So you're directing a movie and you've got to do that. You've got to point a camera right at something. So it's really hard to point a camera at process optimization. Right? I'm really good at process optimization. Where do I even go with my camera? What do I point my camera at? But if you say, so I was working in this company, they had this process that did this, this, and this, and this, and I could look at it and I thought, that's bonkers. They're wasting so much time and energy here. And I said to them, right, here's what you do. Yeah, okay. That's a movie scene. Right. Okay. So the two cards together. Yeah. If you're struggling to think of a particular story, try the emotional
Mm-hmm.
dashboard. Yeah. And think, well, what am I particularly proud of? What am I particularly frustrated by? What makes yeah okay, and then use the movie time card to turn that feeling into a story. Well, where was I? What was happening? Who was with me? What was I doing?
Mm.
What happened next? And that's as simple as it can be. And that's the simplest way to think about. So what you're trying to do is say, right, I I have an expertise here, and this could be your origin story, and it could also be your kind of troubleshooter story. Yeah, I have this. I have these skills, and I can apply them in this way. And for example, drop into the story.
Mm.
So I think that's a really good way to start thinking, because then and then look, with job interviews, obviously you can get some pretty random stuff thrown at you in a job interview, and you have to think on your
Yes.
feet. Yes. What's the worst question? Do you remember what's the worst question you've ever had in a job interview?
Oh gosh. I mean, at a certain point, I feel like they're all the worst. You know, they're all the worst questions. Just if you're getting caught flat-footed on them, I think that just tell me about a time that tell me about a time that like people didn't execute up to your expectation.
Okay.
That's like,
Okay. Yeah.
what do you want me to say?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because actually, what job interviewers are doing really when they say "tell me about a time when," right? They're doing that exactly what I've just said. They're asking you to drop
Hmm.
into a moment. So I suppose, look, it's about 10 years since I last did a job interview, so it's an unpleasant memory for me. Um, but I suppose there's one thing you could do as a part of your prep for your next interview. Well, okay, what are the what are 10 most common questions that in tech companies, what are the 10 most common questions they ask? And it'll tend to be, I would suggest, broadly kind of similar. I mean, they might ask you something very technical about their company, right? And
Hmm.
very technical about your skills. Yes, I get it. But actually, most of the time, they're going to be asking about the human stuff. Yep. And the human stuff is, well, how do you deal with your colleagues? How do you deal with customers? How do you deal with your own motivation, getting yourself out of bed in the morning? Um, how do you deal with stuff when you mess something up? So all of those things are sort of predictable questions. I mean, I've just had a horrible memory. Like it's all about like how emotion takes you back to the story. So I just had a little flash of embarrassment because I remember going into it to a little to a job interview when I was working at the BBC, and the first question they asked was, what do you think was what should our lead story have been this morning in the breakfast news? Right, and I hadn't watched it because I'd been rushing to work and I hadn't seen any of the bulletins, and I can't, and I like, and I thought there and thought, I cannot believe I didn't see that coming. I'm sitting in a news organisation which deals in daily news, and I cannot believe I didn't see that coming. So I was like, oh
Hmm.
God, I'm sorry, I haven't seen the bulletin this morning. I've had a really busy day. I'm like, oh, what a disaster. So yeah, so there's certain things you
Yeah.
can think I really should have seen that coming. Um,
Hmm.
and obviously you're not going to get them all. If you think about if you think about 10 possible questions they're going to ask you, yeah, and can you come up with 10 separate stories or 10 little movie time stories, which show this? Okay, well maybe you're going to get asked 3 of those 10. Yeah. Okay. But don't be in that situation where you're going, I can't believe I didn't see that coming. What do
Hmm.
you think of our so what do you think of our latest product update? And you're going, oh, you've got a product
Yeah.
update.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, you learn from it because you're embarrassed to even think about it.
Hmm.
Okay. So in terms of kind of origin stories, like where do your skills come from? But I think there's something else with the origin story, which I think is also quite powerful, and this might work for you. So, as I say, um, origin stories, expertise stories are kind of look, how do you do the thing you do? What do you do when? Tell me about a time when. Okay, well, use emotional dashboard to find a moment of pride or embarrassment or frustration, yeah, which stands out. And then go, okay, build the story around it with movie time. But when it comes to origin story, I think there's something else as well. It's just worth having a look at. And it's in again the red concept cards. It's called
Hmm.
Curious Tales, right? Because there's something about curiosity that I think other people find interesting. Yeah, because look, if I'm thinking of employing you to do a certain job, I'm kind of wanting, yeah, oh yeah, I want you to do the job, but I also want you the man. I want you the Dan to come in and be a part of the team. I kind of need to know what makes you tick. And so on the back of the Curious Tales card, there are some different prompts about, okay, well, what makes you curious about work? What makes you cautious about things? When are you in the flow? So when are you doing something? You're
Hmm.
so absorbed by it, you lose track of time. What do you envy in other people professionally? Not the fancy car or the fancy watch or anything like that. But what do you
Sure.
envy professionally? What have you given up, sacrificed? Well, you're doing an MBA. You've gone back to school. Well, that's a big
Hmm.
sacrifice. Okay, so all of these things tell me something about what's driving you, what makes you tick. And I think those are really nice little. Have a think about some of the cards on the story that ideas that come to you from there. Okay, um, then the other one to think about in terms of I think in terms of a story is how you help other people.
Hmm.
Because again, I am employing you for your skills and your abilities, but right, anyone in any job, not just in technology or engineering, but anyone in any job gets the job done in like a kind of like there's a kind of triangle, right? And if you imagine in this triangle, you're at the apex, you're at the top of the triangle, right? And
Hmm.
then on the let me get my left and right. See if I can get the left and right ones right. Okay, so on the right hand side of the triangle, there are the tools you use, the
Hmm.
resources you use, the things that you do are all on the right hand side of the triangle. On the
Hmm.
left hand side of the triangle are the people you work with and the your understanding of people and the relationships you have with people. Right. So these are
Sure.
through these. So that's the two. You cannot do your job without both sides. You've got to be good at controlling things, right? Tools, technology, software, resources. Yep. And you've got to be good at understanding people. And you can't control people. That's not what you do. You control things. You don't control people. You
Hmm.
understand them. So that's really what anyone. So when somebody's employing you, what's interesting is on your CV you can show that the. It's very easy to show your kind of technical skills because you can describe them with
Hmm.
qualification. Right. It's a lot harder to show your people skills on a CV. So that's why the stories are really important. That it is about people, not just about process.
Hmm.
And clearly, with curious tales, right? What you're establishing here is you. What sort of person are you? What's driving you? What's making you tick? When it comes to working with other people, though, um, well, I think there's a nice card in the character section of the cards called Hero and Guide, and
Hmm.
the idea with the Hero and Guide card is it allows you to put the focus on take the focus off yourself and put it on to other people. So in this case, you're thinking, okay, I am not the Yoda in this story. I'm all the way around. I'm not Luke. I'm Yoda. Okay,
Hmm.
I'm not Harry Potter. I'm Dumbledore, and so on and so on. Your job is in this story is to support somebody else trying to do something, to be there as a guide. And on the back of the card, it suggests 6 different possible guide characters that you could be. When I do this work with systems designers and engineers and software people, um, they often end up liking they go, oh well, we're definitely explorers, because we help people explore new territory. And maybe we're the sage because we're full of wisdom and knowledge, and we're helping them to understand things. And then, quite interesting, they go, "Yeah, we're rebels because we're breaking the system, and we're changing things, disruptors. We are. Oh, and maybe we're defenders as well because we're helping them to protect what really can." Anyway, but the point is that you can play around with it and see which of
Fair.
those which of the guide characters you think you are, and then again, what you do is when you go, well, actually, you know what, I am a kind of explorer. I am kind of helping people. If you're working in cybersecurity, you're clearly a defender. Yeah, you're helping people to
Hmm.
protect what matters. Um, and you go, okay, so that's what I do. That's how I help people. Okay, for example, and then you go to a movie time story. So it kind of comes back to movie time a lot because when you're telling a movie time story, you've gone out of the high level and you've gone down into the moment, right? And it's in the moment that we see what you mean and we know how it feels, and that's what sticks in people's memory. If you give them the
Hmm.
high levels, if you give them the high level stuff, they understand it, right? But it's harder to remember, and it's harder to kind of because the next person through the door is also going to give them a load of high level stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah. Okay. Any thoughts about that? Because I've got a few other ideas I'd run by you. But any thoughts about? I mean, can you as I've been talking, can you think of little movie time moments where you go, oh, yeah, yeah, that's like the time when I did such and such.
Yeah, no, that's all been great. Like if you see me smiling, like it's
Yes.
just it's an amazing like kind of just for me, I think a lot of it is like if I just even have like the slightest bit of parameters to run in, it's like then
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. Like I can run with that. Even what you're saying, like just identifying myself as something to be able to then to kind of dive into something that's compelling. You're talking about being a rebel. It's like you like my at the fintech company, like my previous manager actually recruited me back into their analytics team to
Uh,
help them kind of rejigger what they were doing because it wasn't effective, like it wasn't taking them where they needed to go. And
so
so
okay.
she knew that I was a change agent in that, and so she brought me on to go and do that thing.
Now, when you say recruited you back, had you left to go on to another job?
We were both at Ticketmaster previously, and
Mm-hmm.
in COVID, which you can imagine,
Mm.
like people were not buying tickets then, and so we were both
Oh
laid
God, yeah.
off from there.
Ah, right.
And
And
so
then she,
she
and then
reached
she,
out.
and she moves on to another company.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, this is great. This is really good. So this is like, okay, hiring managers are like customers in a way. They're buying you. They're buying you. It's obviously a long term
Hmm.
purchase. It's a long term and very expensive purchase. Okay, when we're making a purchase, it's like going on TripAdvisor and deciding where to go, which hotel to use. You're looking for customer reviews. You're looking for social proof of someone else likes that hotel, right? Therefore, I might like it too. Okay, well, it's actually
Hmm.
very, I think in hiring it's similar. So that little story you just told me there, which we could develop a little bit further, that's a really good social proof story because look, we all know what a risky business it is hiring somebody. This is why people tend to hire safe. Yeah, they hire people they
Hmm.
know, they hire people who look like them and sound like them, they hire people who went to the same school as they went to. Okay. So hiring is risky. So you're trying to make yourself look as less and less and less risky as you possibly can. And part of that is about providing some social proof. So in this instance, let me run this story back to you and show you why it's a
Hmm.
really good story. So you were hired by this woman at Ticketmaster. You worked together for how long?
A year and change.
Okay. So you worked together for over a year. Then came COVID and boom, okay, nobody's buying tickets for anything. So Ticketmaster laid you both off. Right. Fast forward however many weeks or months, and she's now working at what was the next company?
Tala is the name of it. Tala.
Tala. Okay, she's working at
Tala. Hmm.
she's work right. She's working at Tala, um, and she's on the phone. Would you want to come and work for me again? Okay. So that's the kind of the very short version of the story. But what's beneath that story is, look, she trusts me. We've worked together already. She knows I'm a safe pair of hands. She knows I'm also a disruptor because in the last team, I was doing this. She wanted the same in this team. So she brought me in and we worked together for how long?
Another year.
Okay. We worked together for another year. Okay. So that sort of story, I think, is powerful because it's not you saying I'm brilliant. It's
Hmm.
it's someone else saying you're brilliant. So it's not you saying I'm a disruptor. She says you're a disruptor. So much
Hmm.
so that she hired you once and then she hired you again. Right. So in sales, I mean, in sales, to be crude about it, you can sell any crap to anyone once, but
Hmm.
you cannot sell crap to people twice. Right. So when customers come back and buy a product again and again and again, right, you must be doing something right. Similarly, you can be hired once and it was a terrible mistake. Right.
Hmm.
So how many people, it's a really interesting question. There's not many people get hired twice by the same person because that's just not how companies work, is it?
Hmm.
So to be hired once and then hired twice, that's a great little story. And in
Okay.
fact, yep, and it's the beginning of another story. And that's called this. In other words, there's like, right, there's multiple levels of story here, because A, she hired me once, she hired me twice. Well, I can't be that bad. Okay. Then B, the reason why she hired me was because she knew I can be disruptive. Fantastic. Okay. So, for example, she brought me in to do this. I tried to do it. I got a lot of resistance at first, a lot of pushback. But we tried this and then this and then this. This is the interesting thing as well with these little mini stories we're talking about, little crafting a series of little mini stories.
Hmm.
You can't make it seem too easy, right? So if someone says to you, yeah, so then I went in there and basically I disrupted everything and it was great. And then we put on 10% growth that year and fantastic. Well, okay, that is fantastic, but it starts to sound a little bit too good to be true. So now we're getting into. I want to get into briefly into story arc, and then I'll kind of I'll just ask you to kind of reflect and see if there's any other questions you want to ask. But
Okay.
there are two kind of story arc. There's two story arcs that are really work really well. Okay, in talking about success, which is what you're doing in these stories. You're talking about success.
Hmm.
Um, okay, well I tell you what. Actually, here's a go. Right, here's let's do three because one thing I can guarantee you they'll ask in a job interview is tell us about a time when you hit a setback or tell us about a mistake you made. Yeah,
Hmm. For
Guaranteed.
sure.
Yeah, because
100%.
what they don't want is to employ someone who says I don't make mistakes. You go, yeah,
Yeah.
right. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so there's three story arcs here which kind of work together as a complementary, and I'll show you why. So the first one is rags to riches. And the rags to
Hmm.
riches story arc, basically, if you look on the back of the card, the hero goes from a bad place to a good place. So a rags to riches project that you work on is where you take on a problem, and thanks to your abilities and skills, yeah, you kind of struggle through the problem and you solve the problem, right?
Hmm.
So that is the most basic version, right, of a project story you should be able to tell was, yeah,
Hmm.
we had a problem, we struggled, we got to the end of it. Right, brilliant. Now, the only thing about rags to and that's 90% of business communication, in my opinion, is rags to riches. Okay. The
Hmm.
only problem with that, we like that story. The only problem with that story is it sometimes sounds too good to be true. And so what you then
Hmm.
end up with, right? This is my favorite story arc of all, I think, because I just like these stories. You end up with kind of pride and fall. And pride and fall is we thought we were doing something really clever.
Hmm.
Yep. But then, boom. Now, I don't know, you're a sci fi fan, Jurassic Park? Yeah?
Hmm. Sure.
Yeah. Hey, look, we can clone dinosaurs. Oh.
Yep.
yeah. Or
Great
it's
log
also,
line.
yeah, absolutely. Or it's also like this ship is unsinkable. Ah,
Oh, yeah.
oh. It's a very old story. This is the Tower of Babel. It's that old. It's a really old story.
Hmm.
Well, Icarus. You can see the picture on the card. It's the story of Icarus. So this
Hmm.
is basically. I thought I was so clever, but then. Okay, so that's a great way to start a story about a mistake. Yeah, we thought we were doing the right thing. So any story that starts, I assumed, I assumed X, Y, Z. Well, that story is not going to finish, and I was right because that's not a story.
Hmm.
I assumed X, Y, and Z is waiting for a but. Yeah, but I quickly realised I was way out of line. Okay, that's a
Hmm.
story. So the Pride and Fall story is basically a great way of getting into a disaster type story. That then, again, obviously with Pride and Fall, I mean, the Icarus story and the Titanic story and the Jurassic Park story all end on a downbeat. Yeah, dinosaur eats
Hmm.
you, ship sinks, boy crashes into the ocean. So they're all quite sad stories. And they're great stories, by the way, to tell about your competitors. Yeah, they're fantastic stories to tell about other people. But when it's about you, well, you then have to move it on to the last of the three, the last of the trio, which is No Easy Way. And the No Easy Way story, if you look at the arc on the back, and you can see that, it starts out
Hmm.
like rags to riches. Yeah, problem, easy solution. Right.
Hmm.
Then it turns into Pride and Fall. Oh no, I can't believe we overlooked that. Yep, into crisis. But then you recover from the setback and you end up eventually with the real. So I was working with a consulting engineer who works in factories in the UK, and he's brought in to well, I suppose it's a little bit like you to do kind of process optimization, but in production
Hmm.
lines. And he said clients call me in and they say, look, we've got a problem with the speed of that particular line. It's not right. And so they come in and they tell him what the problem is. And he sits there and goes, yeah, okay, thinking that's probably not the real problem. And
Hmm.
sure enough, they fix the first problem and it still goes wrong. And that's when they find the real problem. When they hit the setback, they discover, oh, so your real problem is actually this. And then they fix
Hmm.
that. So that is the card I would suggest you use to prepare your what did I learn from messing up story. Yeah, because it's like, well, we tried to do this. We thought we were doing really, really well, but then the quick fix didn't work. And so we did the better fix, we did the real fix. And now I know, because I'm older and wiser, that don't try the quick fix. Quick fix is not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Hmm.
Or don't be the big I am, and don't be bossing everyone else around, and don't not listen to people in the team just because you think that all these things that cause you to all these things that cause you to come crashing down. So that's a brilliant card for preparing for that question of tell me about a time when you messed something up.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, that's the one you want. Um, right. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of recap where we got to, just for my benefit as much as yours. And then if you think of any other questions that you'd like to ask. So basically, we started out talking about the idea of a narrative career, and that doesn't mean I did this and then this and then this and then this.
Hmm.
Right? That's just a list. That's a shopping list. A narrative career is I started doing this, but then this, but then COVID, yeah, but then redundancy, and so now I do this. Well, in my case, tell you what, and so I started as a journalist. I left the BBC thinking I was going to teach creativity. That's what I was going to teach when I left the BBC. But then I realised actually nobody likes to think their ideas aren't very good. Uh,
Hmm.
what they worry about is why is nobody listening to my idea? And so I pivoted into storytelling.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's my narrative career. Um, so the narrative career idea. Within that, you also think about, right, what these interviewers, so that's your big picture, your narrative career. And if you know that, I think you can handle almost any question anyway, because you know where it fits into your narrative. Okay. But then you think, okay, well, what questions are they going to throw at me? Tell me about a time when. Okay. And so it's going to be about a time when you encountered resistance to an idea, or it's going to be about a time when, okay, write them down and then start thinking, okay, all these experiences in my narrative career, I need to drop down into a single moment. Yeah. And emotional dashboard will help you find that moment, and movie time
Hmm.
will help you tell it. Okay. And then those three story arcs might help you give it a little bit of structure. So, rags to riches, pride and fall, no easy way will all help you think, okay, how do I give that moment a beginning, middle, and an end, so it turns into a
Hmm.
story? Because if it has those ingredients, if it has the movie time ingredients, yeah, it has action in a time and place, a single moment of time, it has emotion, and it has structure. So it has a satisfying, yeah, structure. It makes sense. So it's
Hmm.
memorable and it makes sense. And you turn out to be the good guy in the story as well, which is
Hmm.
always great. So yeah. So that would be my. Now what I'm going to send you as well. I'll just do a quick screen share. Oh no, I can't do a screen share. So we've got a blog post I wrote about this, which is about how to tell stellar stories in your next job interview, and it kind of
Hmm.
covers some of these things in very very brief kind of. But so but the idea of going from that kind of star framework: situation, task, action, result. Right. Okay. Well,
Hmm.
we all know that, and I think you can boost. So you can find a story using the star framework. Situation was this, the task was this, the action was this, the result was that. But that could just be and then and then and then and then. So you need to give it a little twist, and you give it a twist by adding the emotion, by raising the stakes. So you can
Hmm.
say, well, here was the situation, this was the task, and I knew if I got it wrong, everyone was going to blame me. Oh, right, you've just raised the stakes. Okay, and at the end, this was the result. Okay, and everybody was so relieved because all the servers came back online. Oh, so you're giving it the emotional, yeah, using the emotions to shake up, to add some drama and add some tense, some memorability to
Hmm.
what would otherwise be quite a dry story. So listen, I'll in the Slack, I'll post that link when I post this video. Um,
Amazing.
when's your next job interview?
Hopefully, sooner than later at this
Right.
point.
Well, listen, I'll tell you what, right, here's the thing. Maybe you can try and think about this in terms of, so we've talked about things like origin stories, troubleshooting stories, how you guide other people, how you recover from mistakes.
Hmm.
What the narrative arc of your career to date has been. This hiring and rehiring story is great. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So we've talked about those. Can I suggest that you try and pick one, right? So go think. Okay, what's the question I dread most in job
Hmm.
interview? All right. So is it the one about tell me a time when you messed up and had to, you got something wrong? Okay. So pick the one that
Hmm.
you dread most, and use the cards we've talked about. So emotional dashboard, movie time, no easy way, right? And try and tell that story in a LinkedIn. Are you on LinkedIn? Do you do LinkedIn?
I am.
Right. Okay.
I am.
Well, try and tell that story in a LinkedIn post. Yeah. And then share that with us on the Slack. And yeah, say use emotional dashboard to pick the story, movie time to set the scene,
Hmm.
no easy way to play it out, right? Post it and we'll all give you feedback on it. How's that sound?
That sounds amazing. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, listen, we're going to wrap up. Any other questions you want to ask? Any other thoughts? Any observations?
Yeah, just like thank you so much for your time. Like this has been extremely helpful. I think like as I think back about our discussion just now, like if I just had to think of it just kind of in a log line from what I
Mm,
heard from what you said is
mm.
right now, if I look at my career, I kind of have this straight linear line. And what you're inviting me into is both at like a meta, very high level to take that straight line and add some bends to it, some highs and lows, and then to zoom into that even and then add more of those. So I take it from a flat kind of just line to really be able to look at what were the highs and lows because those, truly like as humans, like we're drawn to and we like even subconsciously know what those flows are. That makes more sense to us.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's what we remember. And you've got to be remembered. So
Hmm.
if you do your story as a timeline, yeah, where it's going, okay, here are the things on my career, yeah, and you say, okay, well, basically, there's the timeline of my career,
Hmm.
right, over the last few years. Well, okay, it's one way of doing it, but it's really hard to remember. And if you then instead go, okay, well, you know what? It's been a roller coaster. So I started out, one, and then thought I was doing really well in that career, but actually then COVID happened, and it's been a while, and then I came back, but actually then I got made redundant. So yeah, so it's been a roller coaster of a career
Hmm.
because everybody's has been, and then
Hmm.
like you're absolutely right. You then go well, and then take this moment here, right? So here's the moment where I got um, hired. So this put here, here, here. Yeah. So I got hired by Ticket Line. We got fired
Hmm.
because of the pandemic, but I got rehired by the same woman because she trusted me.
Hmm.
Right. So you're just taking a slice of that timeline. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and yeah, yeah. And actually, so it's almost like, I don't know, it's like fractal. In the one way, your career is a roller
Hmm.
coaster. And then when you zoom in on one moment of that career,
Hmm.
it's also a roller coaster.
Hmm. No, that makes that recontextualizes, I think, like in a very powerful way that, like is at least for me, it's much easier to understand that. That's something much more doable for me. So thank you for breaking that down.
It's my pleasure. Listen, I'm going to stop the recording now and post this onto YouTube, drop it into the Slack channel so other people can see it. And as I say, please, please, please use the cards. I'll write them in the Slack. Use those cards we've talked
Hmm.
about. Write a LinkedIn post that you think addresses the worst interview question that you dread the most, and post it to us on the Slack, and we'll all give you some feedback.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll try.